Hi, very good morning. I'm Dr. Janak Patel. Today I'm going to talk on how you approach to an acute abdomen. So, acute abdomen can range right from a minor pain in abdomen, which is acute in onset, right to an acute serious emergency where it can be life threatening. So, we'll be approaching through that. So, we'll be looking at all the conditions which can produce acute abdomen. So, there is an art which we can utilize to find out the cause of acute abdomen. So we are going through that. You can see a lot of pictures which can show you different ways of presentation of an acute abdomen. Now, never get confused that there is something called as acute abdomen, like this. But we are going to talk on acute abdomen, not on acute abdomen. So what do you mean by acute abdomen? It is a potentially life-threatening condition that requires urgent diagnosis and management and may require a surgical intervention. Characteristic: onset is usually less than 24 hours and may sometimes require surgical treatment. Pain is persistent for more than 6 hours. There is guarding, there is rigidity, there is fever, and when you do a total count, leukocytosis, which indicates evidence of infection. Person who has got life-threatening condition may have tachycardia, tachypnea. Person will have a symptom signs suggestive of shock, that is blood pressure almost not recordable. Peripheral pulse are very weak or may not be palpable. Profuse sweating, cold clammy extremities. And if a person who has got a little less amount of life-threatening position, blood pressure may be less than 70 and symptom signs suggestive of a hypotension like giddiness, and person extremities will be little cold. If you auscultate the abdomen, there will be no peristalsis, we call a silent abdomen, which can be because of paralytic ileus. Person who has got a silent abdomen and good number of conditions, abdominal conditions like perforation, obstruction, volvulus, intussusception, or rupture, peritonitis, and person who gets paralytic ileus will have a persistent vomiting. There will be distension of abdomen, particularly in case of an obstruction, volvulus, intussusception, and in case of peritonitis, also in case of perforation. Yes, in case of some conditions, you can have a hematemesis, particularly upper GI tract, that is esophagus, stomach, duodenum, like gastric ulcer, gastric carcinoma, duodenal ulcer, esophageal varices, and in colonic and small intestinal conditions, you can have melena. And upper GI tract also, you can have melena. The person who gets a severe life-threatening position, he will have an altered level of consciousness. And the person who has got fecal vomiters is a very dangerous condition, or even bilious vomiters is usually a dangerous condition, very frequently seen in a case of a small bowel obstructions and large bowel obstructions. There are some red flag signs like confusion, impaired consciousness, person who has got an abdominal pain with confusion, impaired level of consciousness, symptom signs of shock, tachycardia, tachypnea, septic look, dehydration, signs of dehydration, abdominal rigidity, patient lying very still, absence of bowel sounds, associated testicular pathophysiology, marked involuntary guarding or rebound tenderness, tenderness to percussion, hematemesis, melena, and you can find out melena after doing a PR, suspicion of a medical causes for abdominal pain, etc., should be considered as a red flag sign. Now, undiagnosed abdominal pain for less than 7 to 10 days duration, abdominothoracic trauma is excluded from this definition. It accounts for 5 to 10% of emergency visits. It accounts for 1% of all hospital admission, and 70 to 75% of people are discharged after emergency evaluation. So only 7 to 10% of the patient may require an urgent surgery for life-threatening condition. But this group of people should be identified as early as possible. From this list, you can see that non-surgical abdominal pain consists of nearly 34% of groups, which is a big group. Acute appendicitis accounts for 28%, cholecystitis accounts for 10%, small bowel obstruction 4%, perforated peptic ulcer 3%, acute pancreatitis 3%, diverticular disease 3%, and miscellaneous group or other groups accounts for 13%. Almost this is accounting for 20 to 40% of admission rates, and it goes to 50 to 65% for inaccurate initial diagnosis, which requires lot of investigation to confirm the diagnosis. So a good history and examination gives you an idea regarding what is the etiology of acute abdomen. This is a small funny cartoon which shows you two groups of people, both are having an acute abdomen. One person is having a distension and another person is having dehydration. So both needs separate mode of treatment. One needs IV fluids and another needs very frequently surgical intervention. This is a small diagram at leisure. You can have a pause and you can go through all the different causes which will produce pain in a different quadrants: right upper quadrant, left upper quadrant, lower quadrant, umbilical region, epigastrium and hypogastrium. So whenever you approach to an acute abdomen, history and physical examination is a must for diagnosis, and almost 90 to 95% of the time, if you take a good history and do a good physical examination, including abdominal examination, which should include PV, pars speculum, and PR examination in all the patients. Pars speculum examination and PV examination in female, and PR proctoscopy should be done in all cases. Investigations like laboratory and imagination investigation is mainly to have a differential diagnosis in case of a doubt. By and large, there is a big group we call as a non-surgical abdominal pain, which requires a general management. If there is a surgical group, you require a pre-operative preparation and surgical intervention. And by and large, nowadays there is a minimal invasive surgery via laparoscopy or via endoscopy, and that is the thing which is being done in recent advances. Non-surgical abdominal pain, it is also called as a medical causes or non-surgical causes, or it is also called as non-specific abdominal pain. That's why it is a group which should be identified from a surgical group. And this is a small chart which you can go at leisure, which tells you how you differentiate between a surgical groups and a non-surgical group, and try to have a nice way of examination and take a good history followed by a good abdominal examination. Now we are going through all the different parts. That is, first step, always have a good history and examination. And in history, you should take history regarding pain: site, onset, severity, nature of pain, progression or change in the pain character, duration, radiation, movement of pain, aggravating factor, relieving factor, associated symptoms, etc. When all these things are taken properly, almost you come to 90 to 95% of the time you come to the accurate diagnosis. Mainly you will have to differentiate between two big groups we call as a functional group and organic group. Pain character in functional group less likely to change, and person will have a persistent pain which will not change its character. while in an organic group, acute persistent pain and slowly it is increasing in intensity. Pain localization is very sharp in case of organic, while in case of a functional, the person will show you all the different quadrants and the site will go on changing. Pain during sleep will have no effect, while pain in organic will awake the person during night. Person will wake up even during night because of a severe pain, while in a functional, person will be sleeping. Pain in case of organic is usually away from umbilicus depending upon the etiology, while in a case of functional very frequently it is at the or surrounding the umbilicus. In organic, there are good number of associated symptoms like fever, anorexia, vomiting, weight loss, elevated ESR, hematemesis, hematochezia, melena, etc. While in case of functional, it is more of headache, dizziness, and multisystemic complaints in the form of chest pain, etc. Psychological stress is not reported, while in a functional, it is always present. Now, when you go through a abdominal examination, there are certain things which are absolutely necessary. One, inspection. You listen, that is auscultation, and then you palpate or you do percussion. And there is one sign we call as a rebound sign or rebound tenderness, or we call as rousing sign. And you must have a good knowledge when you are doing inspection, auscultation, palpation and percussion, what you are looking for and what pathology you are suspecting, and that is called as step 2. So abdominal examination includes inspection followed by auscultation, followed by palpation and followed by percussion, and that is the pattern in which you usually go. You never do palpation or percussion before auscultation. Always have a general impression. Say, you can see here in this particular person definitely looks sick and look toxic very frequently in a case of infective pathophysiology, perforation, etc. or obstruction. While you can see this person is happy having a selfie, means his pain is less likely to be pathogenic. While this female who is having an acute abdominal pain but does not look toxic, hence less likely to be infective pathophysiology or like perforation or obstruction or rupture, etc. or person having peritonitis. Now here you can see there is a swelling close to the umbilicus. This is umbilical hernia. This is a distension of abdomen. There is a yellowish discoloration. So there is an ascites with liver pathophysiology. This is Cullen sign. This is Gray Turner sign. So this is Cullen sign. This is Gray Turner sign. This is umbilical hernia. This is ascites with little yellowish discoloration. So suggestive of a liver pathophysiology. Now you can see here there are 4 diagrams showing you. This is surgical scar and there is an associated distension of abdomen. So maybe related to recent surgery or maybe related to what surgery has been done. You can see a traumatic injury scar on the chest as well as abdomen. So it may be traumatic injury to the chest and traumatic injury to abdomen. This is Gray Turner sign indicating of intraperitoneal bleeding. And here there is a distension with hepatosplenomegaly. And this is hepatosplenomegaly with ascites. Hepatosplenomegaly plus ascites. Now whenever you auscultate for bowel sounds and you auscultate for vascular sounds like bruit and others. These are all the different signs which you should look while you are doing an examination, like Cullen sign, Gray Turner sign, Murphy's sign, McBurney's sign, Kehr's sign, Iliopsoas obturator signs, rousing sign, etc. You can go through lists, so you will understand how to elicit the sign and what are the possibilities of those signs. So I'm not going through that. I take it for granted. You will go at leisure. There is something called as a rebound tenderness. Very frequently it is a classical sign we call as a rousing sign. And you will get in a case of an appendicitis. This is the way you undergo palpation and percussion. This is slide showing you distension, and that distension is because you can see a free air, and that is because of perforation. And this is showing you ascites. This is showing you how you demonstrate for the costovertebral tenderness. And this is how you do PR proctoscopy. Has to be done, and in female PV and perspeculaire examination. Among investigations what you do, again history, physical examination, alimentary system examination, followed by other system, that is CVS, RS and CNS should be done. Laboratory investigation include liver function test, renal function test, CBC and other depending upon what etiology you are suspecting. Plain X-ray abdomen in standing position, in supine and in lateral positions. KUB mainly for kidney, ureter and bladder to rule out radiopaque stones. Barium study, IBP, angiography, CT, MRI and PET scans are mainly done in a selective groups. Endoscopic examination, colonoscopic and capsule studies are done in a GI tract disorders. Upper GI tract, lower GI tract. Laparoscopic examination is done in a very selective groups, and biopsy is usually done in a suspected case of malignancy or suspected tuberculosis, lymph node biopsy, etc. So this is a big list which will include CBC, urea, electrolyte, creatinine, glucose to rule out diabetic ketoacidosis, LFT, sickling test, pregnancy test in a suspected ectopic pregnancy, ABG to rule out acid-base imbalance, amylase in case of an acute pancreatitis, and serum lipase in case of an acute pancreatitis. Blood grouping and cross-matching if you are suspecting a person having a major bleeding who might require a blood transfusion. Urine analysis in a patient with a renal disorder, particularly acute pyelonephritis. Chest X-ray in standing position to rule out respiratory condition like pneumonia, pneumothorax, pulmonary embolism, and also it will help to identify the gas under the diaphragm in case of a perforated viscus like stomach, small intestine, large bowel, esophagus, etc. Abdominal X-ray are usually taken in a standing position for finding out gas under the diaphragm and to find out small bowel and large bowel obstruction signs. Also, supine posture X-ray is taken when the person cannot stand up. And lateral position X-ray are taken to find out a free gas or what we call as fluid gas level. ECG is taken to rule out cardiovascular condition which can produce an abdominal pain. Mainly, X-ray abdomens will help to identify radiopaque stones, air fluid level, distended bowel to rule out between a small bowel obstruction and large bowel obstruction, calcified aorta, calcified aortic aneurysms, air in the biliary tree, etc. Low hemoglobin usually suspect perforation like ruptured ectopic, ruptured liver, spleen, or even perforation of duodenal ulcer, gastric ulcer which can bleed like anything. Total count, if it is very high, it is in favor of a ischemic bowel disease or severe sepsis, and if it is more than 10,000, it is usually in favor of an acute abdomen, less likely to be sepsis. Platelet count is very low in a case of a dengue fever and other viral fever. Normal white cell count does not rule out acute appendicitis. A raised CRP is in favor of a sepsis. Serum amylase very high is in favor of an acute pancreatitis. Lipase elevation is also in favor of an acute pancreatitis. Paralytic ileus will be very common in case of a peritonitis, perforation, small bowel, large bowel obstruction, etc. Low serum albumin will increase chances of decrease wound healing. Urine pus cells is very frequently in case of a urinary tract infection like pyelonephritis. Pregnancy test will be positive in case of an ectopic pregnancy, and that should be ruled out in any female. Usually upright chest x-ray is very important if person can stand up, and that will give you an idea regarding the respiratory condition plus gas under the diaphragm. KUB is usually taken to identify radiopaque shadows, and also it will help to identify air fluid level in case of a small bowel obstruction, large bowel obstruction, plus gaseous distension will also help to identify small bowel and large bowel obstructions. And if there is a presence of a radiopaque stone, because 90% of the renal stones are radiopaque, while in a gallstone only 10% are radiopaque. Upright abdomen X-ray is always advisable, and if possible it should be taken to rule out gas under the diaphragm as well as air fluid level and gaseous distension to rule out SBO, that is small bowel obstruction and large bowel obstruction. Supine abdomen is taken only in case of a person if he cannot stand up. And then you can have a left lateral decubitus X-ray to rule out a free gas in abdomen. We call pneumoperitoneum. This is a X-ray showing you a free gas under the diaphragm. This X-ray shows you a multiple air fluid level and gaseous distension, suggestive of small bowel obstruction. This is a diagram which shows you a gaseous distension, which is suggestive of again a small bowel obstruction, showing you lots of frustrations. This diagram shows you a ileus sign, gaseous distension because of a large bowel. So you can have this X-ray shows you a multiple air fluid level with gaseous distension, suggestive of a small bowel obstruction. And you can have even a nuclear medicine study, laparoscopic study, and barium enema, etc., and endoscopic study. But usually, in a case of a peritonitis, endoscopy and barium enema is absolutely contraindicated. MRI studies are rarely done, but in a patient in whom you cannot make the diagnosis, MRI, CT scan, and combination of MRI with others can be of use. Ultrasound is very useful. It is a non-invasive technique which will help to identify a gallstone. This shows you an evidence of presence of a gallstones. This shows evidence of appendicitis. Ultrasound can detect appendicitis. This is ultrasound detecting an ectopic pregnancy, unruptured ectopic pregnancy. This shows you presence of an ureteric calculus, which is responsible for renal colic. This ultrasound shows you bowel obstruction, and this one shows you what is called as an ischemic bowel disorders. This shows you the presence of Escherichia lumbricoides. This shows you that there is an abdominal aortic aneurysm. It can be detected on an ultrasound. This is ultrasound which detects appendicitis. This is ultrasound which detects again a presence of gallstones on the right, and on the left, that is appendicitis. This is again showing you a gallbladder wall thickness and inflamed, that is cholecystitis. This is showing you a presence of a gallstones. This is ERCP, that is endoscopic retrograde pancreatoduodenography, pancreatocholecystography, which helps to identify the pancreatic duct and bile duct pathophysiology. And this is again showing you a CT scan, and you can have an MRI scan to detect appendicitis. This is to detect pancreatitis. This is to find out diverticulitis. Again, this is to detect a pancreatitis. This is for diverticular perforation. This is aortic aneurysm. You can detect that also by a good MRI scan and CT scan. So I'm going through that. Now we'll be going through how you approach to a person. So there are 5 different categories which will be presenting in acute abdomen. One, the person who develops acute catastrophe. That is because of a rupture of a very vascular organ like abdominal aneurysm, ectopic pregnancy, pancreatitis, liver rupture, spleen rupture, etc. Most common you will come across is ectopic pregnancy rupture and acute pancreatitis, where person within a short period, we say in minutes and hours, goes into a severe shock stage, we call catastrophe. So it is a life-threatening condition which requires a rapid investigations, and you have to go for an emergency surgery. While the person who develops a perforation, or we call hole, will be an emergency, and sooner or later, if not diagnosed properly, can develop a general peritonitis and can become a life-threatening. A person who gets infection like appendicitis and cholecystitis, we call itis, that is because of infection. These people are emergency and can become life-threatening if not diagnosed early and if not treated properly. But they will become a life-threatening over a period of days and weeks, not immediately. While a person who develops perforation will be life-threatening in few days, while a person who develops an obstruction, or we call block, like small bowel obstruction, large bowel obstruction, volvulus, and intussusception, they are again an emergency and will become a life-threatening over a period of time, again in period of days and weeks. And this is not infective pathophysiology, hence usually they do not develop infective peritonitis and they do not have high-grade fever. While a person who has got a non-surgical abdominal pain can be an acute emergency, can be life-threatening emergency, and abdominal examination may be absolutely normal. But person can come to you with a pain in abdomen like diabetic ketoacidosis, pneumonia, acute MI, particularly inferior wall MI. We'll be going through one by one. So there are different groups we call catastrophic groups where person is hemodynamically unstable and he is showing you symptom signs of collapse. A person who has got perforation we call holes, which will become hemodynamically unstable over a period of time, that is from hours to days, while a person who has got obstruction will usually develop obstruction which will have vomiting and constipation, not able to pass flatus, and he will develop emergency in a short period, that is few days to a weeks, while inflammation, that is itis, we call appendicitis, cholecystitis, too common, where the person presents with fever, pain in abdomen, etc. But they can become emergency if not diagnosed early, and they become emergency or life-threatening if it ruptures. And when we say that I don't know the cause, that is non-specific abdominal pain, or we call non-surgical abdominal pain, which is very frequently because of a medical groups, or we call a minor groups like say renal colic, gallbladder colic, etc., which do not require any surgical intervention. Hence, they usually do not become a medical emergency or surgical emergency. While which is outside the abdomen, we call a cross-border conditions like medical disorders, which can be life-threatening and should be diagnosed, and person usually present with pain in abdomen, but they are non-abdominal conditions, so should be diagnosed and treated accordingly. Here this is one slide which shows you that there are some life-threatening conditions right from the beginning, like aortic aneurysm rupture, acute pancreatitis, small bowel obstructions, perforated peptic ulcer, perforated diverticulitis, etc. They are life threatening right from the beginning. And there are some conditions which are totally non-surgical, like gastroenteritis, lymphadenitis, omental infarction, diverticulitis, etc. While in the center, you can see appendicitis, cholecystitis, sigmoid diverticulitis, sulfingitis, etc. They are initially acute abdomen may become life threatening if not treated early and when they perforate. And if diagnosed early and treated properly, they become self-limiting. So this should be differentiated properly. So life-threatening and self-limiting should be differentiated nicely. And this is a group which can become life-threatening or can become self-limiting. So first group, if person presents with a sudden shock and he has got symptom signs of acute abdomen, always suspect rupture. Person will have an acute abdominal pain. Blood pressure will be less than 90, sometimes even not recordable. Person will have a severe tachycardia, tachypnea. There will be initial stage no distension, but there will be guarding and tenderness. Person will have a severe pallor, persistent vomiting. Fever may be present, may not be present. If it is an infective organ, fever will be present, and if it is a non-infective organ, fever may not be present. Peristalsis will be feeble. Person will have constipation, and person will say that he is not able to pass flatus. And once the person develops paralytic ileus, person will have no peristalsis. Queulen sign and Gray Turner sign will appear after few hours, or we say in 1 or 2 days. And this is life-threatening acute abdomen. Always suspect life-threatening acute abdomen. Some of the common groups: abdominal aortic aneurysm rupture, ectopic pregnancy rupture, and acute fulminant pancreatitis. Out of this, ectopic pregnancy and pancreatitis are most common, while abdominal aortic aneurysm rupture is less common. Once in a while, amoebic liver abscess rupture, and sometimes following an abdominal trauma, rupture of liver spleen can also present in a similar pattern, but that is not included in this particular group. That's why it is a life-threatening condition, should be suspected very early, diagnosed very early, and treatment should be started very early. Otherwise, the mortality rate is very, very high. So there are some medical conditions which can be life-threatening, should be differentiated from abdominal life-threatening condition. Medical life-threatening condition like myocardial infarction, tension pneumothorax, diabetic ketoacidosis, and cortical failure, acute adrenal cortical failure, or we call as Addison's crisis. It is a life-threatening condition. This is a small small way of presentation that acute abdomen can be because of an abdominal aortic aneurysm rupture. The onset will be sudden. It is within seconds. Site, it is usually in the midline or back, particularly spine. It is a sharp tearing pain. Severity wise, it is very severe. It radiates to the back and to the lower limb or to the chest. There is no aggravating factor or relieving factor. By and large, hypertension, sudden anxiety, etc. can be an aggravating factor. Associated symptoms and signs are very frequently, if it is dissecting towards bifurcation of aorta, there will be a pain in lower limb, severe pain in lower limb, cold clammy extremities, and pulse will be absent in lower limb. And you might see a pulsatile swelling in abdomen. I'm skipping over. You can go through at leisure. This is one case presentation. Now this is one presentation, 22-year-old female, presents with 2-hour history of sudden severe lower abdominal pain. Pulse is 140 and threading. Blood pressure is 60. This means she is in a stage of a shock. The abdomen is distended, diffusely tender. Being a female, Signs of shock, acute presentation, you must suspect ectopic pregnancy rupture. So in ectopic pregnancy rupture, onset is sudden, duration is short, usually suprapubic pain or a hypogastric pain. It is a sharp pain, pricking pain, very severe pain. Usually there is no radiation, there is no aggravating factor or relieving factor. It is very frequently associated with amenorrhea, and whenever there is a rupture, the person will have anemia, symptom signs of shock. Cullen sign and Gray Turner sign will appear later on, and Care signs will be positive. Pregnancy test will be positive, which is strongly suggests that there was pregnancy. And sonography will help to identify whether ectopic pregnancy is present and it is ruptured or not. And this is a small diagram showing you the classical symptoms, how you diagnose. Transvaginal ultrasounds will help you, and even what we call as a human choreographic hormones level estimation will also be helpful to identify ectopic pregnancy, and usually it requires an emergency surgery. This is one another presentation, 40 years lady, sudden severe abdominal pain, hypovolumic shock, soft tender abdomen, serum amylase positive, abdominal ultrasound shows evidence of pancreatitis, acute severe gallstone pancreatitis. So pancreatitis can present. This is a diagram which is showing you an obstruction at the level of the common bile duct. You can see here, this is a common bile duct obstruction, and this is an ERCP which shows you that there is an obstruction here and pancreatic duct is not seen. So this shows you an acute obstruction at the level of common bile duct, stone in the common bile duct, and that stone has come from gallbladder. So that is a gallstones, and because of that the person has developed acute severe pancreatitis. So in pancreatitis the onset is sudden acute. It is duration wise, it is a very short duration. Site of pain is in epigastrium and lower left upper quadrant. Pain is very sharp, pain pricking pain. The severity wise it is very severe. It can radiate to left shoulder and back. There is aggravation by taking food. There is associated symptoms like vomiting. There is a distension in the upper part of abdomen, particularly left upper quadrant and epigastric region. Cullen sign and Gray Turner sign may be positive in case of a hemorrhagic pancreatitis. Other finding may be there may be a slight amount of jaundice. Paralytic ileus develops on first or second day. Later on, person can have a peritonitis, symptom signs of shock, and person can also develop pseudocyst of pancreas. This is a CT scan which shows you an evidence of an acute pancreatitis, and you can easily diagnose a person having an acute pancreatitis by doing a serum amylase and serum lipase study. These are the CT scan which shows you an inflamed necrotic pancreas. So diagnosis is mainly by serum amylase, lipase, and by doing ultrasound or CT or MRI showing you involvement of pancreas. And usually management of pancreatitis is a medical management and surgical management. I am not going into that detail. Very rare liver abscess rupture, not very common, but usually onset is slow, duration is in days, site is right upper quadrant. There is a dull aching pain to sharp pain pricking pain. Sometimes the pain can be moderate to severe. Radiation is usually to the right shoulder, aggravated by movement, cough, pressure over the right upper quadrant, and associated symptoms like fever, loss of appetite, jaundice, tender enlarged liver, and person might have other symptom signs. If it ruptures into lung, he can have a respiratory symptoms and signs, because it can rupture into pleural cavity or into lung or into pericardial sac also. These are the figures which shows you Cullen sign, Gray Turner signs, and abdominal trauma injury. We are not interested in that, but whenever a person has got an abdominal trauma injury, person can present as an abdominal compartment syndrome, where the person intra-abdominal pressure is more than 20 millimeter, and it is an acute emergency. And it is a life-threatening emergency. So any person who presents with this type of presentation, he has to be nil per oral, nasogastric tube should be inserted, and intestinal obstruction, particularly in suspected case of intestinal obstruction, paralytic ileus, etc. Or if the person is having a persistent vomiting, IV lines should be started, start IV fluid. If person is having severe pain, analgesic should be given. Narcotic analgesic do not mask the physical sign or obscure the diagnosis, so can be utilized but can induce the sleep, and usually it will relieve a pain in good number of patients. If it is an infective pathophysiology, or you are suspecting an infection, start with IV antibiotics. Correct dehydration and electrolyte imbalance. Put urinary catheter and monitor urine output, because AKI can develop in a person with an severe shock stage. So resuscitation, if any person who is critically ill, airway should be taken care of. Oxygen supplement may be required if a person is having hypoventilation. Oxygen saturation monitoring should be done. Acid-base imbalance should be done, and accordingly it should be corrected. Volume replacement should be done according to the central venous pressure. Now we go to the second group, where person develops gradual shock stage over a period of few hours to days, and person will have a symptom signs of peritonitis, that is equivalent to what we call as a perforation. Person will present as an acute abdomen. BP will be less than 90. Patient may be in a shock stage. There is marked distension, generalized rigidity, pallor, vomiting. There may be fever, may not be a fever. If it is infective pathophysiology, fever is present. Peristalses are feeble, and usually invariably it is silent. Differential diagnosis is always in favor of perforation. Very common in typhoid perforation, fever with shock. It is an emergency and can become a life-threatening if not diagnosed early, because person will develop severe peritonitis and sepsis. Here is an example. A 38-year-old male presents in 6 hours history of sudden severe epigastric pain with nausea, vomiting. He is a smoker. Pulse is 120. BP is 100/60. That means person is having tachycardia, and he is having hypotension. Temperature is 101.6. That means now he is developing infection. There is guarding and rigidity, and upper abdomen, guarding and rigidity in upper abdomen. Hence, this is in favor of what we call as a perforation. Usually, perforation will present as a generalized peritonitis, and it is quite common in duodenal, enteric, or sigmoid colon perforation. Usually, enteric fever is an infective pathophysiology, so it will end up with infective peritonitis very early, while duodenal ulcer perforation will produce infection in a later stage. So these are some of the conditions which can produce perforation, like peptic ulcer, appendicitis, cholecystitis, small bowel perforation, esophageal perforation, colonic perforation, and once in a while aortic dissection rupture. So this is a presentation of peptic ulcer perforation. I'll skip over majority of the things we have discussed before. That is, onset is sudden, short. Usually pain starts at periumbilical region and epigastric region. Type of pain is pin pricking pain, usually very severe. There is no radiation. It is aggravated by movement of abdomen, associated with fever, vomiting, hematemesis, shock, distension. Queulen sign and Gary Turner signs will be positive in a later stage, and person will also have a silent abdomen. So this is another way of presentation. We call it a 62-year male, sudden onset of severe abdominal pain, lying very still, stone-like silent abdomen, and there is, on X-ray it shows you a pneumoperitoneum, and this is a classical condition which is showing you a peptic ulcer perforation, or we call duodenal ulcer perforation. which might require laparotomy or laparoscopic treatment. These are the diagram which shows you. You can see a small crescent sign below the diaphragm, air collection below the diaphragm on right side as well as left side. This is pneumoperitoneum. You can see a this is little more. This is in a left lateral decubitus position, supine X-ray showing you a pneumoperitoneum. And these are the CT scan and MRI scan showing you a pneumoperitoneum. This diagram suggests that this is like a pneumoperitoneum, but you can see a little haustration here, which is because of a colon, and this is called Chilaiditi sign. Now, pneumoperitoneum can be showing you many signs. Just I'll go through very fast all the different signs. Now here you can see a small border below the subhepatic space. You can see here a small border since below a subhepatic space, and this is what is because of a elliptical collection of air within a subhepatic space, and this is in a supine posture which suggests pneumoperitoneum. There is something called as a dog cap sign, and this is because of the air collection in a Morrison pouch. You can see here this is a small space which is showing you air collection, and this is called dog's cap sign, which is air collection below the liver in Morrison pouch. This is double wall. We call a bowel wall becomes prominent because of collection of intraluminal and extraluminal air. You can see here. It can clearly demarcate the inner wall as well as the outer wall, and this is called a regular signs, and this is again in a supine posture. And when you can identify a ligament, falciparum ligament, this is falciparum ligament becomes visualized. This is again because of a free gas in the abdomen, we call it the pneumoperitoneum. This is called football signs. You can see a air all around the organs, entirely in a below the diaphragm, on a lateral side and on even an inferior side. This all suggests a appearance like a football. So that is why it is called as a football sign. When you see on the left side two bubbles, one outside the gastric, this is one bubble and this is another bubble. That's why it is called the two bubble overlapping signs, and that is very frequently again a free gas under the diaphragm and gas in the stomach, free gas under the stomach. That is why it is called double bubble sign. This is a small level of gas, and that is in the central tendon of diaphragm. You can see here also. And that is called cupola sign, and that can be seen again if the X-ray is taken in a standing posture. It is taken in a standing posture, not in a supine posture. You can see a small triangular area of gas collection here. This is triangle sign. Again, that can be seen in a presence of free gas in the abdomen, we call the pneumoperitoneum. Any person who comes to you with a perforation, you will require to relieve the pain, IV fluids, nasogastric suction, antibiotics to reduce peritonitis and sepsis, and surgical intervention if necessary. And these are all the indications for surgical intervention. You can go at leisure. Now we go to the third type of presentation. That is, a person presents with fever, acute abdomen, but no shock signs. This is usually very frequently because of infection or inflammation of a structure. We call itis. So acute abdominal pain, BP normal, no distension, there is only tenderness and particularly local tenderness. We call it a local guarding. Nausea, vomiting is present with fever, which suggests that there is an infection. Peristalses are feeble. Differential diagnosis will be mainly appendicitis, cholecystitis, diverticulitis, and once in a while mild acute pancreatitis. Can become emergency if not diagnosed early and if not treated properly, and then can become a life-threatening conditions. Soon can become an emergency and life-threatening conditions. So here is a presentation, 48-year-old female presents with a 36 hours of, say you can say 3 days of right upper quadrant abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting, low-grade fever, and there is a tenderness with guarding in right upper quadrant. And whenever there is a tenderness in the right upper quadrant, it is in favor of a gallstone. And there is a tenderness, guarding, and rigidity depending upon. And if there is a tenderness in the McBurney's point, it is in favor of appendicitis. So whether it is appendicitis or cholecystitis, you will have to examine properly and try to identify. This is the presentation of appendicitis. Acute onset, it is minutes in days. Usually pain will start at umbilicus or in a right iliac fossa, that is at the McBurney's point. The pain is sharp, pin pricking in character, very severe. From umbilicus, it will radiate to right iliac fossa, particularly McBurney's point. Aggravating factor is by abdominal wall movement, and it is associated findings. Symptom signs are Rawsing sign, obturator signs, iliopsoas sign, Dunfield's sign, and McBurney's sign. And it is associated with symptoms like fever, vomiting, and there is a local tenderness. You can have a local swelling if there is a periappendicular abscess. This is a small diagram showing you how the usual common appendicitis will present to you. So there are few signs like pointing sign, Rawsing sign, psoas sign, obturator signs, which are very commonly present. Some of the people utilize Alvarado score, which gives you mental score, migration of abdominal pain to right iliac fossa, anorexia, nausea, tenderness, rebound tenderness, elevated temperature, leukocytosis, and shift of WBC towards left. If the score is less than 5, it rules out appendicitis, and if the score is more than 7, it suggests in favor of an acute appendicitis. Now, this is a funny cartoon showing you that dentists can also diagnose a case of acute appendicitis. So, we being a physician should not miss a diagnosis of appendicitis. So, this is a diagram showing you how you elicit the psoas sign, that is by what we call as a hyperflexion at hip joint, which will induce pain. There is a Rawsing sign, which is by palpating in a left iliac fossa, and suddenly you release that pressure. Person will have a pain in a right iliac fossa, which is a referred pain because of rebound tenderness, and that is Rawsing sign, which is suggestive of acute appendicitis. In obturator signs, you flex at hip, flex at knee, and have an internal rotation. The person will complain of a sharp pain. This is obturator sign. And these are all the differential diagnoses which you can put in a person with children, adults, female, adult female, and in elderly. Some of the condition which mimics identical like acute appendicitis. You should be aware of all these conditions. Acute cholecystitis will present usually as a little slowly progressive, usually in days. The pain will be in a right upper quadrant, right costal margin, we call as junction of mid clavicular line and a right costal margin. Pin pricking pain, moderate to severe. Person can have a radiation to the back, we call as a Boas sign. Usually pain is aggravated by fatty meal. The person will have associated symptom signs like fever. Murphy's sign will be positive. Person may have jaundice, vomiting, and swelling below the right costal margin at the junction of costal margin and mid clavicular line, and there will be tenderness over that particular swell. This is a diagram which shows you how the gallstone can produce cholecystitis, and you can have a Charcot's triad. This is how to elicit the Murphy's sign, and this was Murphy who described this particular sign. This is a diagram showing you ultrasound which shows you multiple gallstones, and this is the distension of a gallbladder which will have classical Murphy's sign positive, and on an X-ray, and when you do what we call as an X-ray abdomen, you can have air in the gallbladder region because of pneumobilia. After the passage of gallstone, you can have a pneumobilia, that is, air is present in a biliary tree, and this is a classical sign which suggests that the person was having a gallstone. Renal colic can also present as a mild pain, which you will have to differentiate from other acute abdomen condition, but this usually will never present as an acute medical emergency, which is life-threatening emergency. So I'm skipping over renal colic. You can go through at least less likely. Yes, very well diagnosed by KUB and ultrasound. Biliary colic, very commonly because of gallstone. Again, you can go through at leisure. These are the presentations. These are the two common presentations which you will come across. You can have other also like GERD. You can have a pause and you can go through later on, because this is a very long chapter. Gastric ulcer presentation. Duodenal ulcer presentation, same. Now we go through the fourth group of presentation. That person comes to you with a pain, distension of abdomen, vomiting, and there is a silent abdomen. This is classical presentation of obstruction. So person has got an acute abdominal pain, blood pressure is normal, there is a distension and there is a tenderness. Vomiting, constipation and not passing flatus is a classical signs which is suggestive of obstruction. Silent abdomen, no peristalsis, we call paralytic ileus. Differential diagnosis is small bowel obstruction, large bowel obstruction. And this type of presentation is also there in a case of intussusception and volvulus. If the person has got a bilious vomiting or fecal vomiting, it is also one of the findings which is suggestive of a small bowel obstruction and a large bowel obstruction. Usually large bowel obstruction will produce fecal vomiting and small bowel obstruction will produce bilious vomiting. So sooner or later it can become an emergency, and if not diagnosed early can become life-threatening. This is the common presentation. So 63-year-old female presents with 36 hours of bilious vomiting, colicky abdominal pain, abdominal distension, inability to pass flatus. She had hysterectomy 12 years back. Pulse is 120, blood pressure is 90/60, temperature is 99 normal, abdomen is distended and diffusely tender. So you know very well. Vomiting, colicky pain, abdominal distension, not passing flatus, signs of obstruction. And you can see that person has yet not gone into a shock stage. There is a tachycardia, so there is a tendency to go, and this is a patient of small bowel obstruction. And here you can see a slide which shows you a causes of paralytic ileus, which can be post-operative peritonitis, secondary due to inflammation like appendicitis, cholecystitis, pancreatitis, traumatic injury, even in case of uremia, hypokalemia, pneumonia, morphine if it is given in a large dose, renal colic, etc. Small bowel obstruction is most common because of adhesions in 70 to 80% of the people. Once in a while hernia, volvulus, intussusception, gallstone ileus, rarely because of tumors and mesenteric ischemia. While large bowel, the commonest cause is malignancy. 60% are because of sigmoid colon, and another group is volvulus diverticulitis, fecal impaction, and in case of a inflammatory bowel disorder. So small bowel obstruction will usually present as an onset, slow, over a period of days. Site will be umbilical pain or all over the abdomen. Colicky pain, crampy pain. Pain is usually moderate to severe. Radiation usually no. Aggravating factor aggravated after 3 to 2 hours of taking food. Means after taking food, after 2 to 3 hours of food, person will have aggravation of pain. It is relieved after vomiting. Partially relieved, not completely relieved. Associated with symptom signs like constipation, distension, and there may be visible peristalsis if it is a partial obstruction during early stage of acute obstruction and complete obstruction. But in a late stage of partial obstruction, there will be completely no visible peristalsis. And peristalsis will be absent once the person develops paralytic ileus. So these are cardinal features: abdominal pain, vomiting, distension, and constipation. So colicky pain, distension, vomiting, and constipation are the classical presentation in a case of an obstruction. Now we will try to differentiate between two groups, that is small bowel and large bowel. You should always look for what we call as a virgin abdomen, where no surgery is done, and the person who has undergone a surgery is likely to develop an obstruction quite frequently because of fibrosis. So person can have a strangulated hernia, Crohn's disease, intersusception, malignancy, etc. as a cause. And these are the people who can develop an obstruction secondary due to hernia. So you will have to differentiate between small bowel and large bowel. So this is a diagram which shows you small bowel. Small bowel etiology is very common, particularly in a post-surgical group. While in a ileus, it is recent surgery. Pain is very common in a small bowel, where it is a colicky pain, while in a ileus, usually it is not prominent. Abdominal distension is more common in a small bowel obstruction, while in a ileus, it is usually not very common. Bowel sounds are usually increased in the initial stage, while in a person who has undergone a recent surgery and has developed a paralytic ileus will have absence of peristaltic sound. Small bowel will be distended in both, while large bowel distension is absent in case of a small bowel obstruction, while in a paralytic ileus it may be distended also in case of ileus, that is small bowel and large bowel both are distended. Now this is a difference between small bowel and large bowel obstruction. We call as a haustration will be seen very nicely. Complete wall to wall haustration is seen in case of a small bowel, while they are usually not clearly seen in a case of a large bowel. Number of loops are many in case of a small bowel. Number of loops are very few, usually one or two. Distribution of loops are in the center, while in case of a large bowel it is in the periphery. Haustration, complete haustration will be absent, while they will be seen nicely, but they will be not going through one wall to another in case of a large bowel. Diameter of a distension is 3 to 5 centimeter in small bowel, while in a large bowel it is more than 5 centimeter. Radius of curvature is very small in case of a small bowel, while radius of curvature is very big and large in case of a large bowel. You can see a fecal matter present in large bowel, while fecal matter is never seen in case of a small bowel obstruction. This is a typical signs which shows you two differences. In a small bowel there are multiple fluid level. You can see those particular. The diameter is 3 to 5. It is central. Fecal matter is absent. Structure usually shows those valvular pattern. You can see here it is not present. And you can see occasional, these are haustration which are present. And you will see the radius is very small. This radius is very small. Well, you can see the radius. It is a very big, and this goes in favor of a large bowel obstruction. And it is very typical. It is described as a beaded appearance in a case of a small bowel. This is a typical appearance. Beaded appearance. So colicky pain is very common in small bowel. It is less common in large bowel. Vomiting is more common in small bowel. Distension is more in case of a large bowel. And constipation is more common in large bowel. And this can also help you to differentiate between small bowel and large bowel obstruction. If you want to see the fluid level, always you should have an upright picture. So stomach will show you a fluid level only in supine posture. Small bowel will show you 2 to 3 levels, and large bowel will usually not show you much amount of fluid level. You can see here multiple fluid level and multiple loops, more in the center, more in favor of a small bowel, while you see that loops are more laterally and hardly there is a air fluid level, more in favor of large bowel obstruction. And you can see a small haustration here. You can see a haustration here. Very nice haustration. and see the size, a bigger size. This is in favor of a large bowel obstruction. See this, air under the diaphragm, signs of perforation, multiple air fluid level, and multiple lobes, more in the center, again small bowel obstruction. Again, multiple lobes, small bowel obstruction. Multiple lobes, multiple air fluid level, small bowel obstruction. Okay, this is again, you can see a gas. This is following a gallstone, pneumotobilia. This is multiple fluid level. You can see multiple fluid level. This is a fluid level in stomach, and this is distended abdomen, distended bowel lobes, distended bowel lobes. Again, you can see multiple fluid levels, multiple fluid level. This is again more in favor of a small bowel obstruction. Multiple lobes more in the center, more in favor of small bowel obstruction. Again, small bowel obstruction. I'll skip over all this. You can go through at your leisure time. This is a large bowel obstruction. This is multiple fluid level, step ladder pattern. Usually it is described as a step ladder pattern, and particularly you will see very nicely in an erect posture. This is a string of pearl sign, again a small bowel obstruction. This is called as a coil spring appearance. Coil spring appearance. You can see this like a coil of spring. Coil spring. Again in a small bowel obstruction. You can see very nicely that. This is sometimes, very rarely you can see in a gasless dilatation. Small bowel obstruction, gasless. This is again a multiple fluid level, small bowel obstruction. Multiple photographs are there, you can go through. This is a barium mill showing you an obstruction site. This is a coffee bean appearance. This is a CT scan showing you a small bowel obstruction. This is the presence of key in a small bowel. You can go through all these different, there are multiple. Now we come to another presentation now. The person presents as a pain, distension, vomiting, silent abdomen, and shock. Blood pressure is less than 90. There is distension, there is a tenderness. Nausea, vomiting, constipation is present, but there is no fever. Peristalses are feeble or almost absent. We call silent abdomen. Do suspect thromboembolism. Classical example in case of infective endocarditis, or sometimes even in a case person who has got DIC. We call thromboembolism and producing mesenteric infarct, superior mesenteric artery or inferior mesenteric artery. A odd presentation, very frequently in a case of atrial flutter fibrillation, and you can have a thromboembolism secondary to this, or once in a while in case of a sickle cell anemia also. It is a life-threatening emergency. If not diagnosed early, can have very, very high mortality. Another differential diagnosis of such condition is intussusception and volvulus. Now, in a case of intussusception and volvulus, usually the person does not have hypotension and shock finding. They will sooner or later can go into a stage where he can go into a shock stage. So do keep it in mind. The person can present as a distension of abdomen, tenderness, no fever. Person has got nausea, vomiting, and constipation, not passing stool, and usually silent abdomen. This particular group you should try to identify as early as possible because they can become life-threatening. This is a classical abdominal X-ray showing you a volvulus, a big distension of a lobe. This is mainly in a colon, and you can see a big distension, and that is secondary to volvulus and can be easily diagnosed by CT scan. This is a presentation of a mesenteric ischemia. or infarction. Very frequently, we call it intestinal angina, and person who has got arrhythmias, particularly atrial flutter fibrillation, or person has got a hypercoagulable stage where there is a chance of a thromboembolism. Person will present as pain out of proportion to the finding. WBC will be elevated, leukocytosis, amylase will be also elevated, person will have acidosis, stool will be positive for blood, and on plain X-ray you will have a thumb printing sign, and CT scan, CT angio will give you a very nice idea regarding a mesenteric artery occlusion, and this is always after a high index of suspicion, particularly if the person has got a valvular heart disease. So this is a typical thumb printing sign, which is a characteristic of mesenteric artery thrombosis producing mesenteric ischemia and damage to the small bowel. There is something called as a Menschenstein. It is an abdominal malingering when the patient is usually giving a long history of this disease. There are usually several scars in the stomach due to multiple previous surgery. Regardless of the patient complaint, the physical examination finding fails to support this claim, and that's why this is given a name, Munchausen sign. Munchausen sign. That is a person who is malingering. Pain, no shock, no tenderness, and person is having a normal abdomen. BP normal, no distension, no tenderness. Nausea, vomiting is present, but no vomiting, no fever. And if you examine the abdomen, there is no distension, no tenderness, and no abdominal finding. This is usually we call as an extra abdominal condition or a medical condition, or sometimes we call as a non-surgical abdominal pain. And one of the common condition is diabetic ketoacidosis, acute myocardial infarction, and you can have absolutely odd conditions where we call as a psychiatric condition or an anxiety groups, and once in a while very rare late colic. Diabetic ketoacidosis and acute myocardial infarction can be a life-threatening conditions. You must identify them very early. And good number of time acute intermittent porphyria can also present, we short form called as AIP, and there can be other also conditions like tabes dorsalis, late colic, etc. Sickle cell crisis can be the conditions. Diabetic ketoacidosis and acute myocardial infarction are usually emergency, and they are sometimes life-threatening, should be diagnosed as early and treated as early. But abdominal examination will be absolutely normal. So these are some of the clinical pattern. Abdominal pain is there. TPR is normal, blood pressure is normal, no rigidity, no distension, occasional vomiting, peristalsis is normal. You must suspect non-surgical abdomen. 18-year-old girl admitted with 24-hour history of vague pain in lower abdomen and nausea. Her periods are irregular. Vital signs are normal. Abdomen is mildly distended. Minimal localizing sign. Now you can see that this particular female can have any one of non-medical conditions. Less likely to be abdominal conditions. These are all the list you can go through at leisure. Intra-abdominal conditions, extra-abdominal conditions. Some can be life-threatening, some are non-life-threatening. You can go through at leisure. These are all the big list of medical causes which can produce acute abdomen: cardiovascular, respiratory, GI tract, genitourinary tract, endocrine condition, pharmacological conditions, infective pathophysiology, and rare condition like acute intermittent porphyria. But most common condition which are above the diaphragm, we call pneumonia, myocardial infarction, pulmonary infarction, pericarditis, CCF, leaking thoracic abdominal aneurysm, pneumothorax, pleurisy, etc. You should keep this thing in mind. This is diabetic ketoacidosis, how it presents. Go through at leisure time. Acute myocardial infarction, anxiety, late colic, porphyria. Now just I'll highlight little amount of porphyria. Usually onset is slow, longer duration, site is all over the abdomen, sharp pain, mild to moderate severity wise. There is no radiation, there is no aggravating factor, no relieving factor. Person will usually have anemia and signs of hemolysis. Now peculiar, urine when passed is yellow in color, becomes red in color on exposure to sunlight, and this is a genetic disorder, or we call familial disorder. There will be a strong family history, and usually it is picked up by these particular symptoms, and you do an investigation, you pick up these porphyria cases. There is one condition which is again a very important condition, very frequently they will present to you. We call abdominal wall sprain or abdominal wall conditions, where onset is gradual, few days duration. There is a pinpointing pain, localized pain, dull aching pain, mild to moderate severity, no radiation. It is aggravated by local pressure, cough, while getting up, while lifting legs, and while lifting head, and rest will decrease the pain. Associated symptoms are usually no. There is local tenderness after the abdominal wall contraction, that is called Carnot sign. Means when you ask the person to raise the head or raise the foot, and the person gets increased pain, and the local tenderness also increases, and abdominal, this is also called as abdominal wall syndrome. There is another condition where we call as a post-herpetic neuralgia, where at the site of pigmentation there is a hyperesthesia which is called as a Hoover's sign, or we also use the word dysesthesia, and this is after herpes zoster episodes, and this is good number of times seen over the abdomen if the person has developed herpes zoster lesions over the abdomen, and it can be on any side, right side or left side. Abdominal dysentery can also present to you with an abdominal pain, basilarity dysentery. These are all mild. Gastroenteritis, cystitis. Torsion of testis is outside the abdomen but can present as an acute abdomen. Do keep it in mind and do have an examination of testis. So clinical assessment, once it is done, if you can't come to the any diagnosis after doing a repeated examinations and going through a good thorough systemic examination and laboratory and radiological investigation, suspect psychiatric disorders. That is the last diagnosis. The person who has got an acute abdomen, you should have IV lines. Best way to give is crystalloids. Blood is given only when the person has got a massive bleeding inside the abdomen or massive loss by in the form of hematemesis or hematochezia. Nasogastric tube is usually put in a person who is on a conservative line of treatment and catheterization is done. There is no contraindication for administering analgesics. It can be given except very few conditions, particularly person who has got COPD or person who has got a brain damage. NaCID can be given in a biliary colic, ureteric colic, etc. And if a person improves, discharge is advised. And if the person has got an acute emergency, is admitted for urgent surgery depending upon the etiology, or admitted for elective surgery depending upon the etiology. Usually in India, there is always a delay in diagnosis because the person always does a homemade remedy like antacids, we call different methods like soda and milk, etc. And then they approach to a doctor. By that time it is too much delay. Good number of conditions which are very common in India like tuberculosis, typhoid and ascariasis, which can produce a chronic obstructions, etc. or they can end up with perforation. In conclusion, there are 5 clinical patterns of acute abdomen. You should examine properly, and once you suspect an acute abdomen and emergency, pre-operative preparation should be done, and clinical decision is making an art. Knowledge and experience gives you a very good idea, and instinct always is very important to confirm the diagnosis. Pre-operative preparations is very important. Have a fluid and electrolyte balance corrected. Analgesics, antibiotics, and bowel preparations should be done prior to surgery. Urgent surgery, surgery on the next day, surgery at the later day, or conservative line of treatment should be decided depending upon the clinical condition and etiology. This is an era of laparoscopic surgery, so can be done in a well-established case, evolving, and they are avoided in bowel obstruction and in an unstable patient. Take home message: accurate history and complete clinical examination are essential to put a provisional diagnosis or a short list of differential diagnosis and to the institute diagnostic test and to decide if the patient will need an emergency surgery or not. If it is not important to make a specific diagnosis but to detect an urgent or immediate life-threatening conditions. The diagnosis of an acute abdominal pain, particularly in an early stage presentation, is often difficult and is accurate only in 40 to 65% of the cases of the patient. So patient should be re-examined by the same physician after resuscitation. Define surgical from non-surgical abdomen, and term acute abdomen should never be equated with that person who needs a surgery. Analgesics makes the patient free. Opioid, there is no particular contraindication, but it also does not mask the physical signs or does not prevent you from making an accurate diagnosis. So can be utilized in a person who is having an acute severe pain. Only I have told you that in case of a COPD, respiratory disorders, and old age person, and person with a brain damage, think it over. The most common surgical diagnosis is acute appendicitis followed by cholecystitis, small bowel obstruction, and in a gynec, ectopic pregnancy rupture. A useful rule: never place appendicitis as a second differential diagnosis. Hence, acute appendicitis is always a first differential diagnosis. Indication for surgical consultation is severe progressive abdominal pain, marked guarding and rigidity, distension of abdomen, bile stain and fecal vomiting, and if a person is hemodynamically unstable, there is a fluid loss, blood loss, and there is a signs of hypotension and shock, and there is unexplained acidosis, always think of acute emergency. And this is a small cartoon showing you that always a person who is examining is the best person to find out what is the probable etiology of an acute abdomen. So here I end my lecture. I think this will be helpful to you in your everyday practice.